After many days of goose eggs, the Guardians finally have the runs. 11 of them to be exact. We're not going to call it a breakout, but a much-needed spark from the Guardians' offense as they head out west.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome on into a not Therapy Thursday of Locked On Guardians because the Guardians finally scored some runs. We have something to be positive about, look forward to heading into an off day. I am Justin Lada, and this is Locked On Guardians. Thank you for making us your first listen today. And every day wherever you get podcasts, we are covering your Cleveland Guardians every day, from the majors to the minors, the draft, and everything in between. And we do it every day. It's our favorite half hour of the day. We hope it is yours as well. I have been covering the Guardians minor league farm system since 2007. You can find all of my prospect analysis over at Next Year in Cleveland on Substack, the News Herald, the Morning Journal, of course, 5 days a week with my friend and co-host Jeff Ellis, even though this week it was 4 days a week for both of us. We both had an extra off day.
Yeah, we all need off days, just like the Guardians will have 2 this week, actually. But I'm Jeff Ellis.
They've had a lot of off days lately.
They have.
Offensively.
One of your 2 co-hosts here before joining Locked On. I was a national analyst on prospects in the draft for Scouting 24/7, and then became one of the original hosts here at Locked On when they decided to expand into baseball. I want to give a big shout out to our everydayers, especially Sailor Evans. Made a comment about being one of our everydayers, as well as thanking you for making today's podcast your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thanks to, as Jeff said, our everydayers for sticking with us, the good times and the bad. On today's Locked On Guardians, we're going to do a little bit of an injury update at the end. We're going to talk about who's rehabbing, who's close, who's coming back, who could help. We're going to talk a little bit about coaching and managing and why coaches and managers get too much credit, but also too much blame as well. But we'll start today with the Guardians hopefully loosening some things up offensively and where that might be headed for them. Before we get into all that today, this episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Yeah, we're not going to call, I know no one's going to buy it, Jeff, that, they scored 11 runs on Wednesday, so everything's fixed. Everything's happy, and the Guardians are fixed, and everything's going to be great going forward. I don't think we're going to sit here and try to tell anybody that, and I don't think anybody believes that, but good Lord, it was nice to see, and I think the most important thing, Carlos Santana, we'll talk about him a little bit, but he had the Grand Slam, which was 15 years after his Major League debut. But I think the important thing in this game was Lane Thomas. 3 hits, his first home run of the year. This is a guy the Guardians need in their lineup to get things going. Like, that's why we're saying maybe it's a spark, because they didn't, and the nice thing is they didn't have Stephen Kwan in today, who needed an off day, and we could talk about him a little bit too, but you didn't have Kwan. Jose only had a double in this game. I say only, but he only did one thing in this game. Kwan and Jose have done a lot of the heavy lifting this year for the majority of the year. Manzardo was great in April, and they've had other guys like Martinez get hot at times, and Daniel Sheeman had like a really good weekend, or he's been solid all year, but he had that really one on fire weekend. But Jose and Kwan, for the most part, have done the heavy lifting with other guys pitching in. Santana has really found his level again. But this team really missed Lane Thomas and what he can do, especially at the top of the order, because they've been searching for, weeks now, a whole year really, for who's going to hit second, because they abandoned the Jose Ramirez plan there, which, I guess I get, because I don't know. If you fire off all your hitters at once, I guess that's hard. The lineup's got its own issues. But I think having Lane Thomas back in this lineup and being able to play healthy every day is such a big difference, because he can fit at the top of the order. He can run. He can walk. He has some power. Like, he does a little bit of everything. He just gives you another really solid high floor bat this lineup needs. Like, he can be their 3rd or 4th best hitter, and you can be okay with that with how this team is currently constructed.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's, for me, I was telling Justin before we jumped on the air with all of this, like I had 2 big things in this game in particular. One was Lane Thomas. And I think one of the big things is like how much his team missed him. And I don't think we gave a proper credit for like how big of an impact it is to lose an everyday player. And let's be honest, between the 2 injuries, he basically hasn't played this year or been fully healthy. And, he has had a big impact against lefties in these 2 games, 2 of these 3 games. And on top of that, it's what I liked about today in particular is Nick Lodolo is a control artist, and they stuck to the approach against Abbott. There's so many like first pitch ground outs, pop ups. They work counts. They got 2 walks. That ties the most walks Lodolo had all year. This team has not been walking as much of late. We've talked about when they're successful is when they're working counts, and they, getting into the deep part of the bullpen, and they got into the deep part of the bullpen, and that's when this game, really blew up. And I think just like that offensive approach, working more counts, they only ended up with 2 walks in total, but it was they worked counts, they got things together, they knocked out Lodolo, they got in the pen, and I think that's what's going to get them there. The other thing I'll say, it's like going back to what we've seen over the course of the year, we have not seen this team the way it was supposed to be constructed so far. And I know Lane Thomas is a player who, is he a star? No, he's not. He's had all-star seasons, but in the past, but I think, we could say
season,
that it was more some BABIP luck than anything else. But what he has also shown is that he is a 3-win player. And this lineup desperately needs that. And losing one of your counted on stability pieces is really hard to make up, especially when probably the backup stability piece was supposed to be Chase DeLauder, who also got hurt. And then we talk about like some of the infield, like losing Juan Brito, and it's like all so much of their, I think what they're counting on for depth, and maybe it'll work out. Like, Martinez, I think is proving that if nothing else, he's going to be a useful lefty masher and super utility type. And I don't know if we'd have gotten that opportunity. The big part now is to build off of this to, turn the corner. It's been a rough 2 weeks, but every season has a rough 2 weeks. If they can bounce back, then this will just be something that fans forget about, just like they forget about that stretch in Milwaukee a year ago, where it was like Tampa, Milwaukee, and another one where all of a sudden they couldn't find any offense. I mean, I was at all 3 of those Milwaukee games, and it was pitiful. So it's not like this doesn't happen. It happens. You can go listen to yesterday's show. I point out, for as terrible as they've been, they're still not a bottom 5 offense over the last month. The Tigers are. They're not. So you can win even with these situations. Now, would I like to see it get better? Absolutely. First step is getting Lane Thomas healthy, getting David Fry healthy, getting those guys in your lineup. And then the next step is hopefully figuring out what you're going to do with some of these young players, the reinforcements.
I have to laugh, though. You said the backup stability piece was Chase DeLauder.
I know.
Stability and Chase DeLauder in the same sentence, I don't think have ever gone together, truthfully.
No, I know. Man can dream, right?
Yeah, that's a cruel dream to have. DeLauder had a really good night, by the way, on Thursday. We'll talk more about prospects on tomorrow's show, so tune into that if you're looking for more Guardians prospect talk, which I know you are if you're here, because those are the episodes generally people like a lot. Having the team as constructed is really important. I also think too that for the morale of the team, especially the way things have been going lately, like everyone's pressing, everyone's trying to get the big hit. They're probably playing a little bit tight because it's been a rough season so far in terms of consistency, and you have the off day on Thursday. You're flying to Seattle right after Wednesday's game. You're spending the off day in Seattle on Thursday, and then you start a series with the Mariners, who you're fighting for playoffs with at this time, and they've got a good rotation. Now, luckily, they're going to miss, I think, Logan Gilbert. I think he's not ready to come back yet, so they were supposed to get Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert. Now they're going to get Castillo, Kirby, and Emerson Hancock, who is a much better matchup for them than
struggled.
Although he's pitched a little better, I've seen recently, but it's a much better proposition than facing Logan Gilbert. The Mariners can really pitch, so I think you want to have this offensive game where Manzardo had 2 hits. Carlos Santana was so generous; he was giving away a free car in the 3rd inning, and that was so nice of him for everybody. Yeah, so it feels
Santana
much better.
Claus.
Santana Claus, yeah. So you feel much better about having the off day and then going into the West Coast on a better note than you left the homestand on. So I think that matters too. And again, your starting pitching continues to be good. As long as the starting pitching continues to be this good. I know Luis Ortiz didn't have a great night on Monday, but for the most part, he's been pretty good the last few weeks. And Tanner's been better. Gavin's been better. Slade's been great. Logan Allen pitched well in this one. When you have your rotation, your pitching doing that well, it's much easier to find the runs because then you're not down by as much, or it's a much closer game and you're not out of it. So it feels a lot better. All right. We're going to talk about whether or not coaches and managers get a fair amount of credit and blame, because obviously there's been a lot of calls around social media and fans around this team about what coaches or managers are doing and not doing. So we're going to get on next on today's Locked On Guardians.
But first, let's talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. You know them, you love them. I want to talk right now about some of their odds first, right here, because they have MLB draft odds. Ethan Holiday is the favorite. I also got to be honest. I don't know if I would want to bet draft odds this early. I would say at plus 360, take Kate Anderson. That's an interesting one. Jamie Arnold at plus 1900. That's a favorite. If you want to go really off board, JoJo Parker at plus 5,000. Now, if you want to gimme, go over to the NHL draft odds. Negative 650 for the first overall pick being a defenseman. We all know it's going to be a defenseman first overall. I'm surprised they're even allowing odds. They don't allow you to odds on the first overall pick. So, hey, go check that out. It's almost a gimme, like I said. And the NFL playoffs, NBA playoffs are in full swing. We're in the finals, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, check out those draft odds, and place that first $5 bet. If you win, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Last year, Stephen Vogt won the Manager of the Year award. Tito Francona won it twice as the Guardians manager. I don't remember who won it for the National League last year. Was it?
Wasn't it Murphy with the Brewers?
Yeah, it was. They made the playoffs. And the Brewers are playing better lately, but there was a long stretch this year where the Brewers were not looking good.
Remember when the Twins were left for dead? Like, teams have bad stretches.
They do. And a lot of people want to put that out. Like, it's an equal amount of blame between the front office and the coaching staff, the managerials, all that kind of stuff, because the front office puts together the team, but there's also input from the coaching staff or whatever. I don't know. Like, we can't have it where last year Stephen Vogt was a genius because he won the Manager of the Year award in his first season as a manager. And then this year, all of a sudden, everyone's like, I can't get behind his decisions, and this is stupid, that's stupid, and whatever. And then for years, people wanted to fire Ty Van Berkelio, and then they did, and they were happy about that. And then Chris Valaika came in and made the playoffs in 2022, and that really wasn't fixed. It was a weird offense. And then 2023, it wasn't good. And then all of a sudden last year, it was good again, and they won. And then it was, Chris Valaika's gone, and now Grant Fink is here, and people
their coaches get paid too. Their hitters get paid too.
Oh God, I don't want to go back to that.
Cincinnati's offense is below Cleveland's in most categories this year. It just happened to heat up when they faced Cleveland, but
every time Will Benson saw the Guardians was like, I got this.
He's betting like 150 in games where he wasn't in between the last two times the Guardians played or something like that.
He really wanted to figure that out. The Reds offense has been Jekyll and Hyde this year, but it was enough Jekyll this year to win the Ohio Cup. I told everybody when you weren't here, Jeff, that losing the Ohio Cup was your fault because you didn't take it seriously enough. You didn't want it enough.
I would put it in, if you handed me the Ohio Cup, I would just throw it out with the trash.
Well, I mean, Rob Manfred does say it's just another piece of metal. So they're all pieces of metal if you really listen to Rob Manfred. But I don't know. Everybody's obviously entitled to feel how they want. You're a fan. You pay attention. You spend your time, your money on whether it's tickets or a TV package, jerseys, whatever. Feel the way you want. But I don't know. I just think that managers and coaches in general get way too much blame, but they also get too much credit too, because everyone's like, oh, well, Chris Valaika or Grant Fink's here and it was better. Or Chris Valaika took over for Ty Van Berkeley. It was better. And then Stephen Vogt won the Manager of the Year award in his first year, and now he stinks. I think those guys all get way too much blame and credit. Like, I think we should have learned by now, at least I feel like I have, is that a lot of what a manager does is behind the scenes. It's not really like, yes, there are bullpen decisions, there are pinch hitting decisions, there are lineup card decisions. Those things can all influence a game, but it's like one or two decisions a game that really the manager has an impact on. Now, are they higher leverage? Do they have a higher leverage piece that impacts the game? Maybe. But a lot of what managers do now is really like managing people. It's the clubhouse, it's stuff before the game, it's stuff after the game, it's sticking up for players, positive reinforcement and then the coaching, it's the same thing too. Like we've talked before, like coaches, you cannot change someone's approach. How many times have we talked about Doug Nikhazy? This is not, to bash Nikhazy or he obviously is not a hitter, but like there were mechanical changes the Guardians thought he should have made a couple years ago, and it took him until last year to implement them because he just didn't want to do it. Like he had that success at Ole Miss. He thought, why do I need to change? Like I was a good pitcher at Ole Miss, and I can do it in the pros. And it took him years of struggling to really, okay, I need to change something. Daniel Steeman, great case. There was an article by Tim Stebbins on MLB.com today talking about Daniel Steeman in the minors. He was a kind of a banjo hitter who didn't have a lot of impact and didn't have like a major league future. He had to go out and make significant changes to his swing to become a major league player. Players have to want to buy in to make changes and making changes to your approach. Like that's why John Kenson-Noel didn't change. That's not a Grant Fink problem. Go back to the interview I did with Grant Fink over the offseason when he got the job. And I asked him about that. And he said, well, you can't really change his approach too much because you want to make sure he still does the things he's good at. And guess what? That approach got him in trouble because it's hard to change. Player development's one thing, but players also are who they are. Like at the end of the day, these guys got to perform. The managers and coaches can't go out there and put the ball in the tee for them. They can't hold their hand. Like these guys got to go out and execute. You can do your best to put the guy in the best position to succeed, and maybe there's some blame to be had there. Like Jeff, I know you want to mention platoons, but like at the end of the day, these guys to me get way too much blame and too much credit for when things go right and wrong. I think at the end of the day, it's really about the players, and maybe you can say that's more the front office and the development team for that kind of thing than it is the coaching staff.
I mean, I think there's points. Like I said, you can go back to yesterday's show. I think it was really dumb to pinch run the guy who's got a hurt foot who hits lefties instead of having that guy hit against a lefty. Like there's been a lot of weird calls this year where you're like, what are you doing? I think sometimes he's trying to play checkers or he's trying to play chess when everyone's playing checkers, which is, that's an expression, but it's dumb because that means you're just going to lose because that's not how the pieces work. It doesn't mean you're any smarter. It means you're playing the wrong game. So we have those moments, but I'm also not going to get really upset because it means he's trying to do things a little bit differently. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not going to be, but you have to take chances. And listen, I know everyone's complaining about platoons. I see it everywhere. I got to be honest. If you use a platoon effectively, it's an extremely smart decision.
Now, effectively is the key word there.
Yes, and that is 100% the key word. And right now, let's be real honest, right field, they don't have either part of a good platoon. And when they had Lane Thomas hurt, they were down to like their third center fielder and it didn't go well there. But it's a situation where you're going to get a high level of production at about a third of the price. And people are like, cheap. It's not about cheap. Again, this is one of the smallest markets plus things in baseball. This is never a team that's probably going to be in the top 15 of payroll ever again. That's just small market. Like you're hoping they're not going to be bottom 5. You're aiming closer to 18. Right now they're like 23, 24. That's just the way of the industry. So you have to find ways to be effective. You have to find the ways to, people get Moneyball wrong all the time. You have to find the ways to find the inefficiencies and correctly run a platoon is going to do that. I would argue it's not correctly run because they don't have either side of it right now. But that's also just part of not having, they're hoping for one of these young guys to work out and it hasn't. Let's just call a spade a spade. Development isn't linear. It still could, but so far this year it is not.
Right. Yeah. We'll talk more about prospects tomorrow in the development process. I spoke a little bit about it on Tuesday's show. We can get to that more tomorrow. I do have something I want to address with the platoon thing too, and what you said about being effective, and also whether it is or isn't cheap. So we'll finish up our thoughts on coaching and managing, getting too much credit, too much blame, and platoons in just a second. Then we'll get into which Guardians are close to coming back, who can help, what's going on the injury front. We'll tackle that next on today's Locked On Guardians. So many events coming up in Cleveland. It's summertime. If you want to go to the ball game with some friends at the last minute, the Guardians are going to be out of town for a little bit. Doesn't mean there's not a lot to do. You got some time to think about things. Game Time is the perfect place for you to get tickets for everything: baseball games, concerts, comedy shows, plays in Cleveland. We've got so many good theater and so many good plays coming to Cleveland. Game Time is going to help you save money on tickets, so you can do extra things when you go to those events, like splurge on food, drinks, merch, bring more people with you. It's all a lot more fun with friends, and Game Time helps you have more fun at events with friends. They make it fast and simple. They give you last minute deals closer to the event starting. They give you seat views right in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what it looks like, where you're going to be sitting. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. That is our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account. You're going to use code LOCKDOWNMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase with them. Terms apply, but create your account, redeem our code, LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices. That is a guarantee. Appreciate you guys making Locked On Guardians your first listen today, every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. After you're done watching Locked On Guardians, feel free to check out the MLB Game Night, where all of our hosts go through every game throughout the league. You're getting analysis from local hosts and reactions on a national level. Nobody else can bring you that every single day, all games around the league. And we have the MLB Squad Show coming up this week, so you want to tune into that. To get all those episodes, make sure you are auto-downloading on audio. Wherever you get your podcast, make sure you're hitting the bell on YouTube so you never miss any of those content pieces or our reaction videos to games, news, all that kind of good stuff. And I want to throw this out real quick, too. I think we've settled on a date for our next Insiders video chat. It is going to be Tuesday, June 17th. Because the Guardians are playing a night game that night, Jeff and I will have to adjust our recording a little bit. So I think we'll do at least I'll do an Insiders chat at about 8 o'clock on Tuesday, June 17th. So if you're an insider already, make sure you mark that down your calendar. If you want to be in on that conversation and get that invite, become an insider. Join subtext.com/LockedOnGuardians. All right, Jeff, you mentioned about platoons being effective. The most important part of that is, like Stephen Vogt will say, like, oh, I don't like platoons. I just like playing matchups. That is what a platoon is. It's a matchup. Yeah. Which is, again, why you have to watch what they do and not what they say. But the matchup really isn't left or right. The matchup is who does well against this certain thing. Like, which hitter performs well against left-handed pitching? Which hitter performs well against right-handed pitching? Which pitcher does well against lefties or righties? Like, it's not really about, like, oh, you got to have a lefty versus a righty or righty versus a lefty. It's the advantage matchup. It's who does the best at that job. So when you have a guy like Will Wilson on your roster, Will Wilson is not better against lefties than Daniel Sheeman. Like, I know Will Wilson's gone. I don't want to keep bagging on the guy. And he hit 2 home runs the other night, so we can safely say how the gap is between AAA and the majors. But just because a guy hits right-handed doesn't mean he's a better matchup against lefties. Like, Daniel Sheeman is definitely a better matchup against lefties than Will Wilson. Now, there are other things going on behind the scenes that we may or may not know about when it comes to matchups too. So that's always important too. Why certain guys pinch hitting or why he isn't. There could be injuries or anything else we don't know that's going on. But that's another story. And as far as cheapness is concerned, being a platoon, having to carry a platoon on your team is because you don't have a player developed internally who can handle both sides of it, which that's the Guardians' significant problem on their own. So it's not really a cheapness thing, because if you develop your own player for X amount of years, even if you don't hang on with them, you don't have that issue. Externally, it's a lot more expensive to find guys who can do both. But if you aren't going to pay those prices, the best thing you can do is to bring in guys who do one specific thing well and pair them with a guy who does the opposite thing well. Like, I go back to the Rayburn or Geyer Chisenhall platoons. Like, they were some of the best. I think they had like equal level to Bryce Harper's production one year.
If you want to go way back, Ben Broussard and Eduardo Perez.
Right. Yeah, they were a great first place platoon. They were so good. The Mariners wanted both of them, and it gave them Chu and Cabrera from the Mariners. So they do work if they're done properly, both in terms of who you're bringing into the roster, what they can do, and deploying them properly. Is it sexy? No, it's not sexy. But you know what is sexy? Winning. putting your best foot forward of what you have, and that's what the Guardians have to do. And it's not playing, Wilson against lefties because he hits right-handed, but
yeah,
that's just another conversation for another day. So Will Wilson is out the door. Jeff, he's back in AAA.
But he hit 2 home runs, so he'll be back tomorrow because that's all we care about is how they produce in AAA.
Exactly. That's what matters, right? That's what I'm told. When a guy gets a hit in AAA, you got to call him up the next day. That's what I'm told.
We are the Los Angeles Angels. We got to call up anyone who gets a hit.
Yes. I'll be calling anybody who gets drafted. So
yeah,
after a guy's first hit in high A, call him up. We're ready. He's ready to go. I mean, Christian Moore is still in the minor, which is shocking. But that's
it's not if you look at the stat line.
Yeah, that is a stat line you can scout for sure. There are ones in the Guardian system. So let's start here. Shane Bieber, obviously in the news, should be out by now, I think, if it hasn't been. But as far as we know, Shane Bieber is just fine for the moment. He experienced some soreness, which is common with rehabs from Tommy John. He obviously has taken the week off from throwing, and he'll get back to bullpens and live hitters. So this does reset his rehab clock. He's going to have to, go back in the process. But so we're talking maybe a mid-July return instead of a late June, which you and I thought All-Star break was kind of the timetable anyway. And then him coming back by the end of June was a little bit earlier. So we'll see. As long as he makes it through those healthy, but it sounds like they avoid anything serious with that. So that all good news there. And Eric Sabrowski threw a good inning the other night in Akron. That was impressive to see. He's up to 94. Trevor Stephan pitched in Arizona the other night too, and that was his first outing since his surgery last March. I don't know what the velo was or anything like that. He didn't have all that great results, but that first outing back, you're not really looking at the results. You're looking for things like, okay, did he recover healthy? Did he throw hard? Or, where's the velocity in a normal range? We don't know about any of those details yet, but I assume we'll get them relatively soon. So those are guys who could be coming back sometime in the month of June, July, which is a really good sign, especially for a guy like Sabrowski. Although, Colby Allard continues to be solid. It'll be interesting to see how they reintegrate.
It still feels like
Eric
smoke and mirrors with
Sabrowski.
him. He's had some rougher outings.
100% it's smoke and mirrors.
And he's had some rougher outings. I think Allard's a placeholder. I think we have to be really, honest, I think the only guy who's really maybe showing is Enright. Like, I think we're seeing like what you and I have talked about, and I think he's a guy he might move into that long role, honestly.
Enright's been really fantastic. Month of June, not counting Wednesday's outing, he's got no ERA in 3 innings and a 3.07 FIP. So he's been really fantastic. We saw that Joey Cantillo was dealing with some elbow soreness, so he got scratched in AAA. He is supposed to pitch this weekend, so we'll see how that goes. If he's going to be okay, the Guardians better hope so, because he is their best depth option. Although I will say Doug Nikhazy had a great night on Wednesday, so obviously call him up is what we're saying. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. There's other promotions going on. I'm trying to think other injury guys. Who else is coming back, Jeff? We talked Bieber, Sabrowski. Everyone's back as far as minor leaguers. Like Jason Churio's back off the IL. He's not coming up anytime soon, obviously to Cleveland, but Churio's back.
Janau's been back.
Yeah, he's been back.
We're just kind of waiting on the other guys. We're waiting on Brito, waiting on Baz, and those are going to take a while.
Yeah. So Juan Brito is scheduled to play in some rehab games here, maybe over the weekend or next week. So that's good news. I want to get into more of this tomorrow, but I personally think that after rehab is over for Juan Brito, he should be up. I think he should be up immediately. I don't think he wastes any more time with him. He was off to a really good start this year. He had enough time in AAA last year. He's not a guy who needs to get his footing under him in terms of the season. I know he's coming back or needs to get more experience in AAA. I think he's ready pretty quickly.
Let's be real honest. If he hadn't got hurt right now, you'd have Arias and him up the middle. That would be your combo. Yeah. Like that's where they'd be 100%. If he had taken the job, he would be the second baseman. It was just he had a rough spring, and so did Martinez. It can be a hard situation. Everyone, performs well, but I still believe are there in him as a player. And that's how they're going to get better. At the same time, I'll say, like, if they're in contention, even for a wild card, which it's kind of hard not to be, this team always makes moves and trades. So I'm curious to see where it's going.
Yeah, we'll get into more of that tomorrow with the prospects. Yeah. I did talk, if you didn't listen to Tuesday's show, I did talk about the Guardians' window for a path forward this year is closing real soon. If there are any trades to be made this year, in terms of buying or being opportunistic, however you want to frame it, the Guardians' window to find that path forward is coming up here very quickly. Like, they need to kind of get their butts in gear in terms of putting themselves in a position to buy and add to this team. So I can, Jeff, I can ask you for your opinion on that tomorrow as well if we want to get into it. The other notes too I didn't get to. So obviously, Will Brennan, Tommy John, he's out for the season. Probably looking at maybe next spring for him at this point, hopefully, but could be a rough winter for him. We'll talk more about that later. And then Andrew Walters also had surgery on to repair his torn lat, so he's pretty much out for the year too. So that's a guy who will not be helping, which is why getting guys like Stephan back and Sabrowski back are going to be important, because that's one piece.
And then stepping up and Alaman and all that.
Yeah, Alaman had another good night on Wednesday, so we could talk more about him on Friday's show. But those are all kind of where the injuries, comings, and goings are. I will say the lineup in Akron is very interesting, even without Baz right now. We'll talk more about that at tomorrow's show. We'll do Around the Farm Friday. We'll talk about all the happenings going on in minor league baseball for the Guardians, prospect development, and we'll preview the Guardians series as they head out west to Seattle, and they also find their way down to San Francisco, and don't call them the Sacramento A's.
Yep. We'll talk a little bit more too about how Cleveland hosts Seattle in the offseason on tomorrow's show, and the ramifications of that.
Big prospect promotion update tomorrow too. Not to the majors, but a prospect who is moving up in the minors. Finally, if you know, you know.
Yep. Thank you for joining us. Remember to rate and review, download daily. You know the drill. You know the part. Make sure you are watching us win, lose, draw.
Leave a good review. We could use more reviews.
Yeah, leave a review. Tell us what is, tell us something. Tell us something random in the comments. Leave us a random
What prospects should we
in the
talk about
comments.
tomorrow? What prospects do you want to hear more about tomorrow?
Thank you all for joining us.
Confessions.
And go Guardians, go.